But looking into Mason's eyes, she believed him. This felt right. This felt like where she was supposed to be. The first drops of rain began to fall, big and heavy. Thunder rumbled overhead. "We should go in," Mason said, but neither of them moved. Daniela looked up at him, rain beginning to dampen her hair. Mason, whatever she was about to say was cut off by a crack of thunder so loud it made her jump. Mason laughed and put his arm around her shoulders, guiding her inside just as the rain began to pour in earnest. Inside, they dried off with kitchen towels, laughing at their near. Daniela couldn't remember the last time she had laughed like this freely, without worry. As the storm raged outside, they sat in the living room. Mason built a fire in the fireplace and they talked. Daniela found herself telling him things she hadn't told anyone about: the job she had lost, the friends who had abandoned her, and Richard, who had promised forever and left at the first sign of trouble. "No one ever gave without wanting something back," she said bitterly. Mason looked at her thoughtfully. "That's not true," he said. "Not everyone is like that, aren't they?" Daniela challenged. "In my experience, people only stick around as long as you're useful to them." "Is that what you think I'm doing?" Mason asked quietly. "Keeping you around because you're useful?" Daniela looked away. She hadn't meant to imply that, but the fear was there that this too would end once she had served her purpose. "I don't know," she admitted. "I guess I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." Mason reached out and gently turned her face back toward him. "There is no other shoe, Daniela. You're welcome here for as long as you want to stay." His eyes were warm and sincere, and Daniela felt something inside her begin to soften. Maybe, just maybe, this was different. Maybe this was real, but the fear still lingered. She had been hurt too many times to trust easily in Mason. Steady, reliable, Mason seemed too good to be true. That night, as the storm continued to rage outside, Daniela lay in bed listening to the rain against the window. She thought about Mason and the way he looked at her, like she mattered, like she was worth something, like she belonged. She wanted to believe it, but a part of her was afraid to hope, afraid that if she let herself care too much, if she let herself believe that this could be home, it would all be taken away, just like everything else had been. But as she drifted off to sleep, another thought came to her that maybe, just maybe, Fox River Farm was where her heart had been leading her all along. Days turned into weeks at Fox River Farm. July faded into August, and the summer heat settled over the countryside like a warm blanket. Daniela found herself falling into a comfortable routine. Mornings were for animal care and garden work. Afternoons were for whatever project Mason needed help with: fences, cleaning out the barn, or organizing the tool shed. Evenings were for cooking, talking, and watching the sunset from the front porch. It was a simple life, but Daniela found herself happier than she'd been in years. The physical work left her tired but satisfied. The fresh air cleared her mind, and Mason's steady presence was a comfort she hadn't known she needed. One morning, as Daniela collected eggs from the chicken coop, she found herself humming a tune her grandmother used to sing. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt light enough to hum. "You have a nice voice," Mason said from the doorway of the coop. Daniela jumped, nearly dropping the basket of eggs. "I didn't hear you come up." Mason smiled. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you." He nodded at the basket. "Good haul today." "The hens are warming up to me," Daniela said with a smile. "Even old Henrietta let me take her eggs without a fuss." Mason laughed. "She must like you. She usually pecks me half to death." They walked back to the house together, the morning sun warming their backs. Daniela found herself stealing glances at Mason. His profile was strong, his expression peaceful. He seemed so at home here, so comfortable in his own skin. It was something she had always envied in others but had never found for herself. "I was thinking of going into town today," Mason said as they reached the porch. "Need to pick up some supplies. Want to come along?" Daniela hesitated. She hadn't left the farm since arriving. The thought of going into town, of being around other people, made her nervous, but she couldn't hide forever. "Sure," she said finally. "I could use a few things myself." An hour later, they were in Mason's old pickup truck, driving down the country road toward the small town of Riverdale. Daniela watched the landscape roll by: fields of corn and wheat, old farmhouses, the occasional cluster of cows grazing in a pasture. "It's beautiful here," she said. Mason nodded. "Best place on earth, if you ask me. City's got its attractions, but nothing beats this." The town of Riverdale was small but charming, with a main street lined with shops, a diner, and a post office. People waved at Mason as they drove by, and he waved back. "Everyone knows everyone here, huh?" Daniela asked. "Pretty much," Mason replied. "Been that way as long as I can remember." They parked in front of the general store, a large, old-fashioned building with a wooden sign above the door. Inside, it smelled of coffee, spices, and leather. An older woman behind the counter looked up as they entered. "Mason Reed, it's about time you showed your face in town," she called out with a smile. "I was beginning to think you'd turned into a hermit." Mason chuckled. "Been busy with the farm, Mrs. Lewis. You know how it is." Mrs. Lewis's eyes moved to Daniela, curiosity evident in her expression. "And who's this?" "This is Daniela Cruz," Mason said. "She's been helping me out at the farm." "Daniela, it's nice to meet you," Mrs. Lewis said. extending her hand. "We don't get many new faces around here." "Nice to meet you too," Daniela replied, shaking the woman's hand as Mason gathered the supplies he needed. Daniela wandered through the store, looking at the various items on display. It was unlike any store she'd been to in the city. A mix of groceries, hardware, clothing, and household goods all under one roof. "First time in a country store?" Mrs. Lewis asked, coming to stand beside her. Daniela nodded. "Is it that obvious?" Mrs. Lewis smiled kindly. "City girl, aren't you? Don't worry, you'll get used to our ways. And you've got a good guide in Mason. He's one of the best men in this county. He's been very kind to me," Daniela said softly. Mrs. Lewis's eyes twinkled. "He's got a good heart, that one. Been alone too long, if you ask me." Before Daniela could respond, Mason called her over to help him choose some vegetables for dinner. By the time they had gathered everything they needed and checked out, Daniela's mind was whirling with the implications of Mrs. Lewis's words. Had she been suggesting something about her and Mason? As they loaded the supplies into the truck, Daniela noticed a few people watching them, whispering to each other. She felt her cheeks grow warm. "Small town gossip," Mason said, noticing her discomfort. "Don't pay it any mind." "What are they saying?" Daniela asked. Mason shrugged. "Probably wondering who you are and what you're doing at my farm," like Mrs. Lewis said. "We don't get many new faces around here." They got back in the truck, but instead of heading straight back to the farm, Mason drove to the local diner. "Thought we could have lunch here," he said. "They make the best burgers in the county." The diner was small but cozy, with red vinyl, booths, and a jukebox in the corner. A few heads turned as they entered, but Mason seemed unfazed by the attention. He led Daniela to a booth by the window and they sat down. A waitress approached, her face lighting up at the sight of Mason. "Well, look what the cat dragged in." "Haven't seen you in ages, Mason." "Hey, Linda," Mason replied with a smile. "Been busy." Linda's eyes moved to Daniela, and her smile faltered slightly. "And who's your friend?" "This is Daniela Cruz," Mason said. "Daniela, this is Linda Thompson. We went to high school together." "Nice to meet you," Daniela said, feeling a strange tension in the air. Linda's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Likewise, what brings you to our little town?" Before Daniela could answer, Mason spoke up. "Daniela's helping me with the farm. She's got a real knack for gardening." Linda's expression softened slightly. "Is that so? Well, we could use some fresh produce at the diner. Maybe you could supply us." "Mason could be arranged," Mason replied. "Now, how about those famous burgers of yours?" As Linda took their orders and walked away, Daniela leaned across the table. "I think she likes you," she whispered. Mason looked surprised. "Linda, no, we're just old friends." Daniela raised an eyebrow. "That's not how she sees it, I think." Mason shook his head, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "You're imagining things." But as they ate their lunch, Daniela noticed how often Linda came by their table, how she touched Mason's arm when she laughed at something he said, how her eyes followed him. It was clear that Linda Thompson had feelings for Mason Reed, and for some reason that bothered Daniela more than it should have after lunch. They drove back to the farm in comfortable silence. Daniela watched the countryside roll by, thinking about the day. Alina had designed a curriculum that combined classroom instruction in the converted barn with hands-on experience in the fields. Their first group of students, a mixture of retirees looking for new hobbies, young people interested in sustainable living, and a few serious horticulture enthusiasts, had just completed the 6-week course. "I think it went well," Alina said as she and James cleaned up after the graduation celebration. "Don't you?" "Better than well," James replied. "Did you see Mrs. Henderson's face when her tomato plants finally produced? She looked like she'd won the lottery." Alina laughed. "And Bob Johnson, I thought he was going to cry when we showed him how to graft apple trees." "People are hungry for this," James said, growing serious. "For connection to the land, for knowledge that's been lost over generations. And we're giving it back to them," Alina added. "One person at a time." The farm was thriving too. The expanded lavender fields were in full bloom, attracting not just bees but tourists who came to take photos and buy their products: soaps, sachets, honey, and dried bouquets. The online store Alina had set up was doing better than they'd expected, with orders coming in from across the country. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch after a long day of work, James said, "I've been thinking about the Jenkins field." "What about it?" Alina asked, sipping her iced tea. "We should start planning what we want to do there," James said. "The teaching garden, like we talked about." "I've actually been sketching some ideas," Alina admitted. "I was thinking we could divide it into different ecosystem zones: woodland, prairie, wetland, and so on. Show people how to work with their natural environment instead of against it." James nodded enthusiastically. "And maybe a children's garden too. Something interactive, where kids can learn about plants in a fun way." "I love that idea," Alina said. "We could have child-sized tools, a sensory garden with plants they can touch and smell. Maybe even a small maze made of sunflowers." As they continued brainstorming, Alina felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This was what she'd been missing. In her corporate job, the freedom to create something truly meaningful. the joy of working alongside someone who shared her vision. What is it? James asked, noticing her expression. Just thinking about how different my life is now, Alina replied. A year ago, I was sitting in traffic every morning, heading to a job where I was undervalued, dating a man who didn't really see me now. Look at us. James squeezed her hand. I thank my lucky stars every day that you drove up that driveway looking for temporary work. The best kind of temporary, Alina said with a smile. The kind that turns into forever. The next morning, Alina woke feeling strangely nauseated. She barely made it to the bathroom before getting sick. Are you okay? James called through the door, concern in his voice. Fine, Alina managed. Must have been something I ate, but the same thing happened the next day, and the day after that. Always in the morning, always followed by a return to normal by midday. After a week of this, James put his foot down. You need to see a doctor. It's probably just a bug, Alina protested. Please. James's eyes were worried. For me, Alina relented and made an appointment with the local doctor. After examining her and running some tests, Dr. Williams came back into the exam room with a smile. Well, Mrs. Rowe, I can tell you exactly what's causing your morning sickness, she said. You're pregnant. About 6 weeks along, I'd estimate. Alina stared at her in shock. Pregnant, but we weren't. I mean, we talked about waiting a year or two. Life has its own timeline sometimes, Dr. Williams said kindly. Are you happy about this news? Yes, Alina said, realizing it was true. Yes, I am just surprised. That's normal, the doctor assured her. I'll want to see you again in a month. In the meantime, take these prenatal vitamins and try to rest when you need to. Alina drove home in a daze, her mind racing. A baby, a tiny life, half her and half James, growing inside her. How would James react? They'd talked about children in the abstract someday, after the farm was more established, after the educational program was running smoothly. When she pulled up to the farm, James was waiting on the porch, clearly anxious. What did the doctor say? Are you okay? Alina got out of the car slowly. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Then what is it? Why have you been sick? Alina took a deep breath. James, I'm pregnant. His eyes widened. For a moment, he seemed frozen in place. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. Pregnant, really? Alina nodded, suddenly nervous. I know we said we'd wait, but she didn't get to finish. James swept her up in his arms, spinning her around on the driveway. A baby? We're having a baby. His joy was infectious. Alina laughed, relief washing over her. So, you're happy about this? Happy doesn't begin to cover it, James said, setting her down gently. Ecstatic, terrified, overwhelmed, but mostly just in awe, he placed his hand reverently on her still flat stomach. Our child is in there, our future. Due in early April, Alina told him, just in time for spring planting. James's eyes filled with tears. Perfect timing. That evening, they sat on the porch swing, James's arm protectively around Alina, both lost in thoughts of the future. We'll need to convert the office into a nursery, James said, and maybe hire some help for the busy season next year. One step at a time, Alina laughed. We have months to prepare. I know, James said. I just want everything to be perfect. It won't be perfect, Alina said realistically, but it will be ours. That's better than perfect. As summer faded into fall, Alina's body began to change. The morning sickness passed, replaced by a new roundness to her figure and a glow that made her more beautiful than ever in James's eyes. They worked side by side, preparing the farm for winter, planting cover crops in the fields, mulching the perennial beds, harvesting the last of the vegetables before frost. Alina moved more slowly now, taking breaks when she needed them, while James watched over her with loving concern. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, she would tease when he tried to take heavy tools from her hands. Humor me, he would reply. It's my first time being a father. In October, they began work on the nursery. James insisted on making the crib himself, carefully selecting wood from the old oak tree that had fallen in last year's storm. This way our child will sleep in, a piece of the farm, he explained as he sanded the wood smooth. Connected to this land from the very beginning, Alina, painting the walls a soft green, smiled at his sentiment. Just like we are. As the days grew shorter and the nights colder, they spent evenings by the fire making plans and dreaming dreams for their child. What if it's a girl? James wondered, his hand on Alina's growing belly. A daughter with your eyes and determination, or a boy with your gentle heart, Alina countered. Either way, this child will be loved. And free, James added. Free to choose their own path, whether it's on this farm or somewhere else entirely. Alina looked at him in surprise. You'd be okay with that, if our child didn't want to take over the farm someday? James nodded slowly. I want them to find what makes them happy, just like you did. Just like we both did, Alina corrected, leaning against him. Together, in December, they hosted a holiday workshop at the farm, teaching people how to make wreaths and garlands from natural materials. Alina, now visibly pregnant, demonstrated techniques while James helped participants select materials from piles of evergreen boughs, dried flowers, and berries. You're glowing, One of the participants, an older woman named Ruth, told Alina. Motherhood suits you already. Thank you, Alina replied, resting a hand on her rounded belly. It's all still a bit surreal. The best things often are, Ruth said wisely. My George and I have been married 52 years now. Started out on a farm not unlike this one. Raised 3 children, weathered droughts and floods and all manner of hardships. She looked around the decorated barn with appreciation. But it's a good life. A real life. That's exactly what I've found here, Alina agreed. Reality, not fantasy. Hard work, not empty promises. After the workshop, as they cleaned up together, James said, I saw you talking with Ruth. What wisdom was she sharing? Just confirmation that we're on the right path, Alina replied. That what we're building here matters. James pulled her close, his hand finding the spot where their baby had been kicking. I never doubted it. As winter deepened, Golden Meadow Farm was transformed by snow and ice into a glittering wonderland. Alina and James spent the coldest days inside, working on plans for the coming spring, the new teaching garden in the Jenkins field, expanded workshop offerings, and of course, preparations for the baby. I was thinking, Alina said one evening as they sat by the fire, about names for the baby. I've been thinking about that too, James admitted. If it's a girl, Alina continued, what about Lavender, after the field where you proposed? James smiled. Lavender Row. It has a nice ring to it. And if it's a boy? James considered for a moment. Much, Daniela said, grabbing plates from the cabinet. It struck her how comfortable she felt here, how she knew where everything was, how she moved around this kitchen as if it were her own. They ate lunch together, recounting the adventure with the cow, laughing at how they must have looked completely covered in mud. You should go get cleaned up, Daniela said when they finished eating. I'll take care of the dishes. Mason nodded and headed upstairs. Daniela washed the plates and wiped down the table, humming to herself. The phone rang, and without thinking she answered it. Fox River Farm. This is Daniela. There was a pause on the other end. Oh, a female voice said, sounding surprised. I was trying to reach Mason Reed. He's unavailable at the moment, Daniela replied. Can I take a message? This is Linda Thompson. From the diner, the voice said, a hint of coolness in her tone. I wanted to talk to Mason about supplying some produce for the diner, like we discussed. I remember, Daniela said. I can have him call you back when he's available. That would be fine, Linda said. And may I ask, ... Are you staying at the farm long-term now? The question caught Daniela off guard. I'm not sure, she answered honestly. I see, Linda said, her voice softening slightly. Well, just have Mason call me when he can. After hanging up, Daniela stood by the phone, troubled by the conversation. Linda's question had brought all her uncertainties rushing back. Was she staying long-term? Did she want to? Did Mason want her to? And why did the thought of leaving make her feel so empty inside? Mason came back downstairs, clean and smelling of soap. Who was on the phone? He asked. Linda Thompson, Daniela replied. About the produce for the diner. She wants you to call her back. Mason nodded. I'll do that later. First, I wanted to ask you something. Daniela's heart skipped a beat. What is it? There's a harvest festival in town this weekend, Mason said. It's a big deal around here, food, music, dancing. I was wondering if you'd like to go with me. The way he said it, a little hesitant, made it clear this wasn't just a casual invitation. He was asking her on a date. Daniela felt a flutter of excitement, quickly followed by fear. Going to the festival together would make whatever was happening between them more real, more public. The whole town would see them together. You don't have to, Mason added quickly when she didn't respond right away. I just thought it might be fun. No, I'd like to go, Daniela said, pushing past her fear. It sounds nice. Mason's face lit up with a smile that made Daniela's heart race. Great, it's Saturday night. Nothing fancy, but people do dress up a bit. Daniela nodded, suddenly realizing she didn't have anything suitable to wear. All she had brought with her were practical clothes for farm work. As if reading her mind. Mason said, there's a dress shop in town. If you need something, we could go tomorrow. That would be good, Daniela replied, touched by his thoughtfulness. The next day they drove into town again. Mason dropped Daniela off at the dress shop, promising to pick her up in an hour after he ran some errands. The shop was small but charming, with a selection of dresses displayed in the window. A bell jingled as Daniela entered, and an older woman with silver hair emerged from the back. Hello, dear, she said with a warm smile. Can I help you find something? I need a dress for the Harvest Festival, Daniela explained. The woman's eyes lit up with interest. First time at our festival. I'm Helen, by the way. Helen Barnes. Daniela Cruz. And yes, it's my first time. You're staying at Mason Reed's farm, aren't you? Helen asked, leading Daniela to a rack of dresses. The whole town's talking about it. Daniela felt her cheeks grow warm. I've been helping out with the farm work. Helen nodded knowingly. Mason's a good man. Been alone too long, if you ask me. Now, let's find you a dress that'll knock his socks off. For the next half hour, Daniela tried on dresses while Helen offered opinions and advice. Finally, they settled on a simple but pretty blue dress that brought out the color of Daniela's eyes and complemented her dark hair. Perfect, Helen declared. Mason won't be able to take his eyes off you. Daniela blushed again but couldn't help feeling pleased as she paid for the dress. As she was leaving the shop, Helen called after her, "Daniela, you be good to him, you hear? That boy's been through enough." Before Daniela could ask what she meant, the shop door closed behind her. She stood on the sidewalk, confused by Helen's words. What had Mason been through? He had mentioned his parents' deaths, but Helen's tone suggested there was more to the story. Mason pulled up in his truck a few minutes later, and Daniela pushed the questions to the back of her mind. She'd ask him about it later, maybe. The days leading up to the festival were busy with farm work. A late summer storm had damaged part of the barn roof, and Mason and Daniela spent long hours repairing it. Despite the hard work, Daniela found herself looking forward to Saturday night with growing excitement. When Saturday finally arrived, Daniela felt nervous as she got ready in her room. She put on the blue dress, which fit her perfectly, and pinned her hair up in a simple style. She had no makeup with her, but her skin was tanned from working outside, and her cheeks had a natural flush of excitement. Taking a deep breath, she went downstairs. Mason was waiting in the living room, dressed in clean jeans and a button-up shirt. He turned when he heard her on the stairs, and the look on his face made all of Daniela's nervousness fade away. "You look beautiful," he said. "Simply thank you," Daniela replied softly. "You look nice too." The drive to town was quiet, a nervous energy filling the truck. Daniela found herself stealing glances at Mason, admiring his strong profile, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. The town square had been transformed for the festival. Strings of lights hung between trees, tables laden with food lined one side, and a band was playing on a small stage. People of all ages milled about, talking, laughing, and dancing. As Mason and Daniela walked in together, heads turned. Daniela felt self-conscious under the curious gazes, but Mason, it seemed, unfazed. He greeted people warmly, introducing Daniela to everyone they met. "Mason, good to see you," called a tall man with a friendly face. "And this must be Daniela. I'm Pastor John. Nice to meet you," Daniela said, shaking his hand. "Mason here tells me you've been a godsend at the farm," Pastor John said with a smile. "We're all glad to see him with a smile on his face again." Before Daniela could respond, Mrs. Lewis appeared with a plate of food. "You two must be hungry. Mason, you're looking well. And Daniela, that dress is perfect on you." "Thank you," Daniela said, taking the offered plate. "Helen at the dress shop helped me pick it out. Helen has a good eye," Mrs. Lewis agreed. "Now go enjoy yourselves. The night is young." As they moved through the crowd, Daniela noticed Linda Thompson watching them from the food table, her expression unreadable. But Mason didn't seem to notice. His attention was fully on Daniela. They ate at a table with Joe Miller and his wife, who thanked Daniela again for helping with their cow. The food was delicious: fried chicken, potato salad, fresh corn on the cob, and homemade pies for dessert. After they finished eating, the band started playing a slow song. Mason turned to Daniela, a question in his eyes. "Would you like to dance?" he asked. Daniela hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." Mason led her to the dance floor where other couples were already swaying to the music. He placed one hand on her waist, took her hand with the other, and pulled her gently closer. Daniela felt her heart pounding as they began to move together. She hadn't been this close to Mason before, hadn't felt the solid warmth of his chest against hers, the gentle strength of his hand on her waist. "I'm not much of a dancer," Mason admitted quietly. "You're doing fine," Daniela assured him, looking up into his eyes. As they danced, the rest of the festival seemed to fade away. The music, the lights, the people, it all became a blur surrounding just the two of them. Daniela felt safe in Mason's arms, felt right in a way she had never experienced before. When the song ended, Mason didn't pull away immediately. He looked down at Daniela, his eyes searching hers, and for a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Her heart raced at the thought, but then someone called Mason's name, breaking the spell between them. Mason stepped back, his hand lingering on Daniela's waist for just a moment longer before falling away. "Mason, there you are," said an older man, approaching them with a stern expression. "I've been looking all over for you." "Mr. Thompson," Mason greeted him, his tone suddenly formal. "Is everything okay?" "Need to talk to you about that property line dispute," Mr. Thompson said gruffly. His eyes flicked to Daniela. "In private, if you don't mind." "Of course," Mason replied. He turned to Daniela apologetically. "I'll just be a minute. Will you be okay?" "I'll be fine," Daniela assured him. "Take your time." As Mason walked away with Mr. Thompson, Daniela wandered over to the refreshment table for a glass of punch. She was just taking a sip when Linda appeared beside her. "Enjoying the festival?" Linda asked, her tone friendly enough, though her eyes were cool. "Yes, it's lovely," Daniela replied politely. Linda nodded, looking out at the dance floor. "You and Mason seem ... close." "We're friends," Daniela said carefully, not sure what Linda was getting at. Linda gave a small laugh. "Mason doesn't dance with friends, Daniela. I've known him my whole life, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Daniela didn't know how to respond to that. Was it true? Did Mason really look at her in a special way? Just be careful with him, Linda continued, her voice softer now. He's been hurt before. Badly. What do you mean? Daniela asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Linda studied her for a moment, as if deciding whether to continue. He was engaged once, about 5 years ago, right before his parents got sick. Her name was Rebecca. She was from the city, like you. Daniela felt a chill run down her spine. Mason had never mentioned being engaged. What happened? She asked quietly. When his parents got sick, Mason gave up everything to come back and take care of them. His job in the city, his apartment, his plans. Rebecca didn't like that. She didn't want to live on a farm in the middle of nowhere. She gave him an ultimatum, her or his parents. And he chose his parents, Daniela guessed, her heart aching for Mason. Linda nodded. He didn't even hesitate. His parents needed him, and he wasn't going to abandon them. Rebecca left, and Mason stayed. He nursed his parents through their illness, ran the farm, and never complained. Not once. Daniela looked across the festival grounds where Mason was still talking with Mr. Thompson. She saw him in a new light now, understanding better the quiet strength that defined him. After his parents passed, Linda continued, we all thought he might sell the farm and leave, start fresh somewhere else. But he stayed. He said the farm was his home, his family's legacy. He couldn't leave it. Thank you for telling me this, Daniela said sincerely. Linda's expression softened. I care about Mason. We all do. He's a good man who deserved better than what life gave him. She paused, looking Daniela in the eye. Just don't hurt him, okay? He's been through enough. With that, Linda walked away, leaving Daniela with a head full of new thoughts and a heart full of conflicting emotions. Mason had been engaged before, to a woman from the city who had left him when things got tough, just like Richard had left Daniela. But Mason was nothing like Richard. When faced with a difficult choice, Mason had chosen family, responsibility, the hard path. Richard had chosen the easy way out, walking away when Daniela needed him most, and now Daniela was faced with her own choice. She had been telling herself that her stay at Fox River Farm was temporary, that eventually she would move on, go back to the city, rebuild her life. But was that what she really wanted anymore? Before she could answer that question, Mason returned, looking apologetic. Sorry about that, he said. Mr. Thompson can be a bit intense. It's okay, Daniela assured him. Everything all right? Mason nodded. Just a misunderstanding about where his property ends and mine begins. Nothing serious. He looked at her curiously. You okay? You look like you're thinking hard about something. Daniela smiled, pushing her troubled thoughts aside for now. I'm fine. Just enjoying the festival. Mason returned her smile, holding out his hand. They're playing another slow song, Dance With Me Again. This time Daniela didn't hesitate. She took his hand and let him lead her back to the dance floor. As they moved together to the music, Daniela rested her head against Mason's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Whatever her fears, whatever her doubts, in this moment, she knew one thing for certain: she was falling in love with Mason Reed, and that terrified her as much as it thrilled her. The drive back to the farm after the festival was quiet. Daniela sat close to Mason in the truck, her mind still processing everything Linda had told her. She wanted to ask Mason about Rebecca, about his engagement, but she didn't know how to bring it up without revealing that Linda had been talking about him. The night had been magical, the dancing, the food, the way the townspeople had welcomed her. For a few hours, Daniela had allowed herself to believe that she could belong here, that she could be part of this community, part of Mason's life. But now doubt crept back in. Mason had been hurt before by a city woman who couldn't adjust to farm life. What made Daniela any different? How could she be sure she wouldn't end up hurting him too? You're quiet, Mason observed as they turned onto the long driveway leading to the farmhouse. Daniela smiled faintly. Just tired. It was a lovely evening though. It was, Mason agreed, glancing at her. I'm glad you came with me. When they reached the house, Mason turned off the engine but didn't move to get out of the truck right away. Instead, he turned to face Daniela, his expression serious. Daniela, he began, his voice low. I need to tell you something. Daniela's heart skipped a beat. What is it? Mason took a deep breath. I've been thinking about this for a while now. You've been here almost 2 months, and in that time, the farm has changed. It feels alive again. And I think that's because of you. Daniela's breath caught in her throat. Mason. Let me finish, he said gently. I know you came here looking for a temporary place to stay. And if that's still what you want, I understand. But I want you to know that you have a place here, for as long as you want it. The farm needs you. He paused, his eyes holding hers. I need you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Daniela felt tears pricking at her eyes. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, right now, Mason assured her. Just think about it. He leaned forward slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. But Daniela didn't move. Her heart was pounding as Mason's lips met hers in a gentle kiss that sent warmth spreading through her entire body. When they broke apart, Daniela felt dizzy with emotion. Mason smiled at her, a mixture of hope and vulnerability in his eyes. "Good night, Daniela," he said softly. "Good night," she replied, her voice barely audible. They walked into the house together, but parted at the stairs, each going to their own room. Daniela changed out of her dress and into her pajamas, her mind whirling with thoughts and feelings. Mason had kissed her. Mason wanted her to stay, not just as a farmhand, but as something more, something permanent. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Did she want to stay? Could she build a life here? So far from everything she had known, Daniela went to the window and looked out at the moonlit farm. It was beautiful, peaceful. In the short time she had been here, it had started to feel like home in a way her apartment in the city never had, and Mason made her feel safe, valued, seen. He wasn't like Richard or any of the other men she had dated. He was steady, reliable, kind. When he said he needed her, she believed him, but the doubts lingered. What if she wasn't cut out for farm life in the long run? What if the novelty wore off and she found herself missing the city? What if she ended up hurting Mason the way Rebecca had? Sleep eluded Daniela that night as she wrestled with these questions, turning them over and over in her mind without finding any clear answers. The next morning, Daniela woke early after a restless night. She dressed quickly and went downstairs, half hoping, half fearing that Mason would already be there. But the kitchen was empty. Through the window, she could see him in the distance, checking on the cows in the pasture. Daniela made coffee and sat at the table, trying to sort out her feelings. She needed to give Mason an answer, but she still wasn't sure what that answer should be. The phone rang, startling her out of her thoughts. Daniela hesitated before answering, remembering her uncomfortable conversation with Linda. "Fox River Farm," she said tentatively. "Is this Daniela?" asked a male voice she didn't recognize. "Yes, it is, Daniela Cruz. This is Robert Williams from Williams Marketing in the city. I'm calling about your job application." Daniela's heart raced. 2 weeks ago, just before the trip into town with Mason, she had sent out job applications to several marketing firms in the city. It had been a precaution, a way to keep her options open. She had almost forgotten about it. "Oh yes. Hello, Mr. Williams. I was very impressed with your resume and portfolio, Miss Cruz. We'd like to invite you for an interview next week. The position is for a senior marketing consultant with a starting salary of $75,000 plus benefits. Are you interested?" Daniela felt the room spin slightly. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she had been hoping for when she first lost her job. A prestigious firm, a senior position, an excellent salary. It was everything she had worked for in her career. "Miss Cruz, are you there?" "Yes, sorry," Daniela said quickly. "I'm just surprised. That's a very generous offer. We believe in investing in talent," Mr. Williams said. "Your work speaks for itself. Can you come in for an interview on Tuesday at 10 a.m.? Tuesday, that was just 2 days away. She would need to leave tomorrow to make it back to the city in time. Could I call you back about that?" Daniela asked. "I need to check my schedule, of course. You have my number on caller ID. I look forward to hearing from you soon." After hanging up, Daniela sat at the table, staring at the phone. She should be ecstatic. This was the break she had been waiting for, the chance to get her life back on track, to prove to everyone who had written her off that she could bounce back. So why did the thought of leaving Fox River Farm make her feel so empty inside? The back door opened, and Mason walked in, bringing with him the fresh scent of morning air. He smiled when he saw her, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "Morning," he said. "Coffee smells good." Daniela poured him a cup, her hands slightly unsteady. "Mason, I need to tell you something." He sat across from her, his expression growing serious. "What is it?" "I just got a call from a marketing firm in the city. They want me to come in for an interview on Tuesday for a senior position." Mason's face remained carefully neutral, but Daniela saw the flash of pain in his eyes before he masked it. "That's great," he said evenly. "Congratulations." "I haven't accepted yet," Daniela said quickly. "I told them I'd call back." Mason nodded. "Slowly, but you're going to take it, aren't you? It's what you've been working toward." Daniela looked down at her coffee cup. "I don't know. I thought it was what I wanted, but now ... now what?" Mason prompted gently when she didn't continue. Daniela looked up at him, her eyes filling with tears. "Now I'm not sure anymore. Everything's different now." Mason reached across the table and took her hand. "Daniela, I meant what I said last night. I want you to stay, but I would never ask you to give up your dreams for me. I've seen what happens when someone stays somewhere they don't want to be. It doesn't end well for anyone." "You're talking about Rebecca," Daniela said softly. Mason's eyes widened in surprise. "How do you know about Rebecca?" "Linda told me. At the festival." Mason sighed, releasing her hand and leaning back in his chair. "I should have told you myself." I'm sorry, Daniela said. "I shouldn't have listened to gossip about you." "It's not gossip if it's true," Mason said with a sad smile. "Yes, I was engaged to Rebecca. We met in the city when I was working there. She was beautiful, ambitious, exciting. I thought we wanted the same things." He paused, looking out the window at the farm. Then my parents got sick. Lung cancer, both of them, within months of each other. The doctors said it might have been something in the old barn, asbestos or mold. They weren't sure. Daniela listened silently, her heart aching for him. I came back to take care of them, to run the farm. I thought it would be temporary, that once they recovered, Rebecca and I would go back to our life in the city. But they didn't recover. And Rebecca, she didn't understand why I couldn't just hire someone to take care of them, why I had to be the one to stay. Mason's voice grew quiet. She said she didn't sign up to be a farmer's wife, to live in the middle of nowhere. She gave me a choice, her or the farm. And you chose the farm, Daniela said. You chose your family, Mason nodded. I couldn't leave them when they needed me most. Rebecca couldn't understand that, so she left. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his story hanging between them. I don't regret my choice, Mason said finally. But I do regret that I put Rebecca in that position. I should have been more honest with her and with myself about what this place means to me. It's not just land and buildings. It's my heritage, my roots, it's who I am. Daniela looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth of his words. Mason Reed was Fox River Farm, and Fox River Farm was Mason Reed. They were inseparable. I don't want to make the same mistake with you, Mason continued. I don't want to ask you to be something you're not, to live a life that would make you unhappy. If the city is where you belong, where you'll be happiest, then that's where you should be. Daniela felt tears spill down her cheeks. But what if I don't know where I belong anymore? What if I'm afraid of making the wrong choice? Mason got up and came around the table, kneeling beside her chair. He took both her hands in his double quotes. Daniela, what are you afraid of, really? She looked into his eyes, warm and steady and so full of something that looked like love that it made her chest ache. I'm afraid of believing in this inner sand, then having it fall apart, she admitted. I'm afraid of giving up a career I've worked so hard for and then regretting it. I'm afraid of not being enough for you, for this life. Mason squeezed her hands gently. Those are all valid fears. I can't promise you that everything will be perfect. Farming is hard work, and there will be bad years along with the good ones. I can't promise you'll never miss the city or the career you had there. He reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek. But I can promise you this, as long as I'm breathing, you will never have to face any of it alone. We'll figure it out together, day by day. And if someday you decide this isn't the life you want, I won't hold you back. I'll help you pack your bags myself, if that's what will make you happy. Daniela let out a sob that was half laughter. You'd really do that? I would, Mason said solemnly. Because I love you, Daniela Cruz. I think I've loved you since what day you showed up on my doorstep with nothing but a backpack and a faded map. The words hit Daniela like a physical force. No one had ever said those words to her and meant them the way Mason did, simply, honestly, without expectation or manipulation. I love you too, she whispered, and it felt like the truest thing she had ever said. Mason's face lit up with a joy so pure it took her breath away. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as if she was the most precious thing in the world. Does this mean you'll stay? He asked, his voice hopeful. Daniela pulled back slightly to look at him. I need to think about the job, not because I don't want to be with you, but because I need to be sure I'm staying for the right reasons. I don't want to wake up one day and resent you or the farm because I gave up something I really wanted. Mason nodded, understanding in his eyes. That's fair. Take all the time you need. I'm going to call Mr. Williams and ask if I can postpone the interview. Daniela decided. I need a few more days to figure things out. Whatever you decide, Mason said, just know that you have a home here, always. Later that day, after calling the marketing firm to reschedule her interview for the following week, Daniela went for a walk around the farm. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She walked past the garden where she had first worked, now abundant with vegetables she had helped grow. She passed the chicken coop, where even cranky old Henrietta had come to accept her. She walked to the edge of the fields, golden with ripening corn. This place had become more than just a temporary shelter. It had become a home in a way her apartment in the city never had. And Mason had become more than just a kind stranger who had taken her in. He had become the person she wanted to share her life with. But was that enough? Could she really give up her career, the life she had worked so hard to build, for love? Or would she end up like Rebecca, resenting the isolation, the hard work, the limitations of farm life? As darkness fell, Daniela made her way back to the farmhouse. The lights were on inside, warm and inviting. Through the window, she could see Mason in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The simple domesticity of the scene made her heart swell. She stood outside for a moment longer, looking up at the stars that were so much brighter here than in the city. And suddenly, with a clarity that took her breath away, Daniela knew what she wanted. She walked up the porch steps and opened the door. Mason looked up as she entered, a question in his eyes. I've made my decision, Daniela said, her voice steady and sure. Mason set down the spoon he was holding, his expression carefully neutral. And I'm going to the interview, Daniela said. Mason's face fell, but he nodded bravely. I understand. No, you don't, Daniela continued, moving closer to him. I'm going to the interview because I need to close that chapter properly. I need to look that life in the face one more time and be absolutely sure when I say no to it. Mason's eyes widened. You're saying no. You're staying. Daniela nodded, a smile breaking across her face. I'm staying, Mason. This is where I belong. With you, with this farm, with this life we can build together. Mason crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and swept her into his arms, lifting her off, her feet in a joyful embrace. Daniela laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. Are you sure? Mason asked, setting her down but keeping his arms around her. Really sure. I've never been more sure of anything, Daniela replied. I love you, Mason Reed, and I love this life we're building. It might not always be easy, but it's real, it's honest, it's ours. Mason kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and joy and future. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I was so afraid you were going to leave, he admitted. I was afraid too, Daniela said. Afraid of staying, afraid of leaving. But someone very wise once told me that sometimes life doesn't need to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as seeing what you need and reaching out to take it. Mason smiled, recognizing his own words. Smart guy. He has his moments, Daniela teased. Then, more seriously, I do want to keep using my marketing skills somehow. Maybe I could help local businesses with their advertising, or start a website for the farm to sell products online. There are ways to blend my old life with this new one. We'll figure it out together, Mason promised, day by day. That night, rain began to fall, a gentle summer shower that pattered against the roof and windows. Daniela and Mason sat on the couch in the living room, a photo album open on their laps. Mason was showing her pictures of the farm through the years, of his parents and grandparents, of the legacy she was now becoming part of. As the rain grew heavier, Daniela felt a sense of peace settle over her. The storm outside couldn't touch them here, safe and warm in the home they now shared. Mason looked at her, his eyes full of love. What are you thinking about? Daniela smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. I was thinking about the day I arrived here, how lost I felt, how alone, how all I wanted was a roof over my head for one night. And instead, you found a home, Mason said softly, and a heart. Yes, Daniela agreed, looking up at him with all the love in her heart. I came looking for a roof, but I found my heart. Mason cupped her cheek gently, his eyes serious. Then let's build something neither of us ever has to run from. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the farmhouse on Fox River Farm, Daniela Cruz had found what she had been searching for all along: a place to belong, a love to believe in, and a future bright with promise. The next morning, as the sun rose over Fox River Farm, Daniela stood on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching Mason check on the animals in the distance. The air was fresh and clean after the rain. The world washed knew this was her life now, not the one she had planned, not the one she had worked toward for so many years, but somehow, miraculously, the one she was meant to have all along. Mason looked up and saw her standing there. He waved, and Daniela waved back, her heart full, too bursting with love and gratitude and hope. She had come to Fox River Farm with nothing but a backpack, a fading map, and a heart heavy with silence. She had found so much more than shelter. She had found home. She had found love. She had found herself. And as she walked down the porch steps to join Mason in the morning sunshine, Daniela knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of their story. The best was yet to come.